This is Copper Center. The folks were there in 1941 about, and it's a fish wheel along the Copper River there. The Indians were allowed to catch fish that way. This was the first year Dad had the movie camera. As we go along, you'll see some glitches there. Learning how to run the movie camera. Dave was about 10. There's glitch number 1. Lens cap over. Little limited view. They just spent the 1 year there. It was a kind of an Indian settlement. We lived in a building with a school downstairs and the living quarters upstairs. And I don't know if they were just demonstrating that this was how fish was caught, or if we were lucky enough to take any home. But it was salmon. It was good fish. The Indians dried the fish on those racks there. Kept it for winter. Fed some fish to the dogs too, I think. The dogs were kind of scroungy looking. Panoraming was a little rough in the first year. Hard on the eyes. But the dogs had good quarters. Better than the Waldorf Astoria. I don't remember teams there, but I was maybe 6. They might have had dog teams and I didn't know it. I don't know why else they'd have a lot of dogs together like that. Well, this is a fishing boat tied up to the coal storage in Juneau. The fellow has a load of halibut to bring in. Now this is in Barrow, where the folks taught from 42, I think, to 45. And trying to change the film where it wasn't dark enough, get the light streaks on the side there. This would be summer, late spring or summer, trying to show what the village looks like. And this is an outing, a walk on a weekend, probably Sunday afternoon in the spring, out on the ice. It's my mother and one of the dogs running ahead. Nice sunny day. It was probably a spring day. Maybe April. There's me and 2 or 3 of my pals. The chunks of ice were very large, very high. It's our dog Mike, family pet. All of our dogs were Mike for some reason. And my mother and some of the girls that came along for the walk, for the outing. The ice in some places was higher than a house. They're just posing. A couple of them, their heads are cut off. He got better at this camera as he went along. But always in the Arctic, in the white snow with sun, no place to be dark. It's difficult changing the film. There's a high chunk of ice. My mother was 5'8". She wasn't a short person. You can see some of the village there behind the ice. And this is another excursion out on the ice out in the offshore. My brother's up at the top there, and I'm approaching. And my friend Sam is behind me, my brother's friend Sam, actually, I still have correspondence with. You can tell it's my brother. Look how he's acting. Some of my friends. The shore is beyond, so this was offshore. And I don't remember how we got out there. It was a sunny spring day. I don't know. Whoop. Well, as I recall, that wouldn't have been a good place to fall. We were getting up a kind of a snowball fight there. The boys against the girls. Margaret Amalgok, she was bombarding the boys, having a wonderful time. Happy people, they like to play and laugh. I think alcohol and some of the woes of civilization have quieted that down a little bit, but good people, the Eskimos. Well, we have to jump down from one level to the next here. That's me, and that's Margaret. Margaret was, 4 or 5 years older than me, but you can see the height difference. And Mother had a game leg most of the time I remember her. She broke it and had a lot of trouble with it always, so she's being very careful, not going to just jump down. And there's Dave in the kayak. He learned to paddle. That could be how he got out there. He got pretty cagey at it. Now this is the North Star. This is the government ship that brought all the supplies, food and supplies to people up along the Arctic coast. They have 2 or 3 flights a day into Barrow now, I know, so I don't know how much need they have of that, but I'm sure it still runs. They've had several North Stars since this one, but this is what it was then. I believe this is when we were moving from Barrow down to Kotzebue. I was not quite 10. Maybe I was 9. I was very sad. I didn't like leaving there. Had good friends and I liked it there. It took several days to get down along the coast to Kotzebue. It was a little tricky. It was probably August, sometime in August when this was taken, and beginning to get cold and tricky sometimes to get out through the ice cakes there. The skippers had made that trip a number of times. We're usually pretty good at it. Knew where to find the open spot to put the ship through. And Dad had kind of a fondness for icebergs. Off the shore of Barrow icebergs. He took quite a few pictures of them. And this is an Eskimo dancing in the schoolhouse. The men, I don't remember women ever playing those drums. The men beat the drums and the women sat along behind and did the singing, and anybody did singing that wanted to. And the men, when they danced, they kind of beat their chest and made grand gestures about how big the bear was or how big the whale and what they did, and the women just stood pretty much in one place and sort of demurely waved their arms. Gloves were of necessity, but they sort of swayed on their feet and waved their arms. I never tried it. They kept trying to get me to, but I was pretty bashful. And they didn't ever dance together. It was always separately. Those dances could go on till 5 or 6 in the morning. I don't know, Father had to, I suppose he had to tell them when they were through. People didn't have much of a sense of day and night, especially when the sun shone all night long. They didn't have 8 to 5 jobs in those days. They just lived by, when they were hungry they ate, and when they were sleepy they slept. And if they wanted to dance, they danced. Play football out behind the school all night, sunshine. Women used to bring their babies and nurse their babies and let them sleep and then get up and dance, and kids would come and play a little while and fall asleep and then wake up again. Now here's some more men. They're a little more demonstrative. They're telling a story usually. Once in a rare while the women would take a notion to imitate the men, but not very often. Sometimes one dancer would get up at a time. That's David Brower, and he's doing the men's kind of dancing. Schoolhouse was a great gathering place. It was the biggest space in the church. School parties and dances held at the schoolhouse. They had 2 classrooms, and the wall between the two would come out. These 2 ladies were imitating the men. And the one on the right here, Lena, is sort of the town clown. They said she could swallow her chin, but didn't ever see such a thing. And the other lady, her father, I think, was white. Maybe she wasn't total Eskimo. But they were sort of spoofing the men, trying to keep their faces straight, dancing men kind of dance. Lena even almost gets down on the floor, and she's trying not to laugh. Lots of fun. This group is getting ready to pull a skin boat out to a whaling camp. Lee Suvelu whaling crew, and Dave there in the blue parkie straightening out the dogs. I don't know that they do it any different. You have to get out over the ice somehow, and those boats were pretty sturdy. Dogs pulled the skin boats. They're still whaling. I don't know how much of this has changed in 50 years. The dogs pulled the sled. Pretty small boat when you think of dealing with a whale. Some of the terrain wasn't very inviting. It's the sun light on the side of the film there. Dad used to try and do that up under his parkie and change the film. It's kind of hard. Didn't always work. So now they're getting out to the whaling camp. The women didn't go on that. Only the men went. And the women would come out and help cut up the whale, I think. Somebody would go and get the women to help. The men did the cooking, and I think the women being out there was some superstition, with bad luck or something. This is a seal skin that they're blowing up like you blow up a balloon to use for a float. And the fellows are cleaning whale guns. Big, heavy brass whale gun. I don't know what they use to hunt whales now. I haven't seen pictures or anything of it. I know they're whaling. So I hear from people in Barrow and I get reports that they're whaling. Dave's friend Sam is in his late 60s. He isn't whaling anymore, but his sons do now. I don't know what he's looking for, this fella, but he's looking out towards the ocean. Barrow. There's a little girl. Spring. It looks nice, but it's very cold. It's cold like you can't go without mittens or you'll freeze your hands. So. These girls have found a bare spot. The sun is sitting there. Might be playing some kind of game or telling stories or something. Now this is, I think, Talkbook's crew going out after whales. They're bringing the boat. They're going to bring the boat up on the beach. This is Dad's double exposure, but the dancing is pale enough that he said that the dancers were telling the story of the hunt, which you can see a little plainer. It was too good to toss out. There's Dad. Trying out a whale gun. These are heavy things. Very heavy. A bunch of ducks went by. And there's a seal float. Full of air. Blow it up tight and tie it off. Somehow or another, Mother and I were allowed out at the whaling camp for part of a day, and Mother's sitting and I'm laying down on that sled there in front of the tent. I'm not sure how we rated, but we didn't stay very long. And going along in a power launch here. More hunting, maybe walrus. This is still Barrow. Most of the film is Barrow, actually. This looks like a whaling crew, though. I think this is Tokpuk whaling crew. So it was probably April or so. And the whaling crew is on the ice there, and they coming in from a scouting trip or something. They pull the boat up onto the ice. Dave's friend Sam whaled with Tokpuk, who's supposed to be the last of the great whalers. Well, they may have good whalers now. Dave and Sam were helping with this crew. Dave's in the white parkie over there on the left of the bow. Now, if they hear a whale or sight a whale, they'll have to push it back in again, but at least it's safe. The tent there is camped out. This kid has shot a duck, or that's the Eskimo means of retrieving it from the water. They try and hook it with this thing and pull it in. Used to make duck stew, duck soup. Dave and Sam are over there by the boat. Dave was about maybe 13. Sam was a little bit older than Dave, but not too much. Sam's mother died, I think, just before we moved to Barrow, and he was in our home a lot. Dave taught him how to play the guitar, and when he had a birthday, Mother had a cake for him, and he was in our home a lot. He named his first son Tokpuk after this old last of the great whalers in the back of the boat here. I don't know if they're going out. I suppose they're hunting, trying to find signs of whale. This would be maybe 1943, 44. I think that was kind of like a telescope, something that helped you see better. Now those are walrus if you look carefully on the ice, so they hear the thing coming, they wiggle themselves off into the water. There's one there. There he goes. I don't remember that they ate walrus meat. I thought they fed it to the dogs, but they used the walrus skins for things. It was showing the village of Barrow. Looks drastically different these days. The schoolhouse we lived in is torn down, and they have a new one. They have a fancy school. There's a new church, a couple of them. Lots of homes, lots and lots and lots of homes. I don't remember this old fellow's name. This was taken along the beach. And, they're unloading chunks of walrus. Of course, they used the tusks for ivory. They carved ivory, some of them, and made a little money that way. They're loading it onto a sled thing. I think Dad drove a tractor and hauled the meat along on the sled. It was summer. It was beach, sandy. Lots of walrus meat. Messy, messy on the clothes. Small boys got to help carry the parts, flippers and heads and tusks and all sorts of stuff. After I became a mother, I realized how filthy those clothes must be. In a land with no running water, what a wonderful experience the mothers must have had trying to clean up the clothes. I don't know how much walrus hunting they do anymore up there, because anybody who can be is employed, and they don't have the dogs they used to. They have snow machines. There's a walrus. Dad used to say they were tenderizing the meat. Nice place to jump. Fall down, hurt yourself. Whoa. Summer, summer. Warmer days. There's a whale in the water that they got that far. I don't know if this is the one Dad tried to pull out with the tractor. It was too heavy. Whatever. Yeah. I don't know if he had a cable or what, but it didn't do what he hoped, I don't think. I don't know if it broke or if he just couldn't budge the whale or what. He got it out a little ways. There's a bunch of little kids. This is color film now. They were posing for Dad, taking pictures, trying to keep their faces straight. Not really succeeding. This little kid's name was Vincent Nagiak, and he used to tease that he was related to Dad. They probably did get the name Vincent from Dad and Grandpa. No, those are kidneys or something they're holding up there. They're helping load stuff onto the sled. You must have had several sled loads. There's a lot of meat there. Lots of ivory. You still see carved ivory, but the Eskimo crafts anyway, some of them are gotten pretty high priced because people don't do it much anymore. Working jobs and they get money that way. That fella's going to get that on his head. Know the reason why. Might as well be icky from head to toe. Yeah, this was a large bearded seal he was looking at. And there's Sam, he's been seal hunting. Bringing home a seal. There's a polar bear someone shot. This lady's name is Cora Tigaluk, and she had the old tattoo on her chin. I think that indicated when they were marriageable age. There's the snout of the bearded seal. I think he gets a little bit of them cutting it up with their ulus and skinning it out. Those ulus are wonderful knives. Ivory handle or bone handle, half moon shape they used in cutting everything, really, and in skin sewing, cutting bits of skin. And they use seal skin for mucklucks. There's another iceberg series, Father's favorite. One of the white families in the village had these St. Bernards. They were kind of interesting. I think the male was Chief. I don't remember the other one. Big old jowls and catch lemming or field mice and go around and around in their mouths there and couldn't find their way out. Big old fellows, a lot different than the natives' sled dogs. These were some of the homes between the schoolhouse and the ocean. They're going out in their launch again, do a little more hunting of some sort. Seals or walrus or whatever they can find. In that lagoon, and across that lagoon over there is Browerville, where the trader lived, taken from the school. Kind of a panoramic view of the village towards the ocean there. People seeing this now would wonder, that was a mast out of a sailing ship that came up through there, and I think probably got stuck in the ice, and they put that mast up in the schoolyard. It was an achievement to climb it. Put your initials up there to prove you did. People seeing this now would hardly believe how sparsely populated it is, how few homes. It's a large village now. Some of the, well, Sam, for one, Dave's friend, has moved to an outlying village because it's gotten too big city for him. But you can see how flat it is. There isn't a bump anywhere or hill of any sort. Easy to get lost. Another iceberg or two off the beach of Barrow. Sometimes he took a lot of something and then he planned to pick out the parts he liked best. I don't know if that was the case with the icebergs or what, but There's enough for everybody. Our Aunt Lois actually, when she visited us one summer there, actually took a dip in that Arctic water in her bathing suit. I don't think she stayed long, but pretty cold. Some of the white people were just on a Sunday afternoon outing on one of the launches. A lady in the middle there was the Weather Bureau. One of them was an old maid teacher, and I'm crawling along in the foreground here. Weather Bureau people had 3 little boys, and that's one of them in the left lower corner. Maxie and Dougie, and that's Miss Perky, the school teacher. I remember her well. She taught me how to embroider. Tucked me under her wing. Lots of times teachers would get off a plane there or a boat and get right back on. But she was pretty much of a trooper. Well, I think that might be Maxie over there to the right and Dougie to the left, and the mother in between them at the other end of the boat there. Bunch of little towheads. And there's Mother. Steve Hobson is next to her. He's probably been gone quite a while. I hear from his son and daughter-in-law at Christmas time. There I am crawling along. I think we were just going up north of Barrow just for people to get a little boat ride. Something different. And that's the church. In the 40s, that was the only church in the village, Presbyterian church. And they built a new one, and I think they used this for gymnasium for a while. When I was there in 76, it was still standing. But they've done wonderful things since then. It was spring, and it's kind of a social gathering place. After church, they'd all mill around and visit before they went home. Nice sunshiny day. Everybody went to church and brought their own Bible or hymn book from home. You had to be sick with TB or something not to go. Most everybody, just part of what they did. And the fellow in the white there was the piano player, organ player. And Father gathered up some of the young ladies in a row just to show their colorful snow shirts. And of course, those people would be in their 70s and 80s by now. Trying to get more of them to join. This was probably taken near one of the doors of the schoolhouse. We were not far from the church. It's a little fella. The boardwalk went past the schoolhouse, and the lagoon there, and beyond was Browersville. And people were on the way to church, I guess, because that's where the boardwalk led to. Walking along there. There I am in the front. There's Mother, probably Miss Perky. Heading for church. When you ride on your mother's back, one leg around one side and one around the other, for long enough, then you end up a little on the bow-legged side, you might notice, the way some of them walk. Carry one in front and one behind. I really liked the colorful snow shirts. The parkie underneath had the fur towards the inside, and that was just covering up the skin. But it was a big thing to have a new fancy snow shirt. Like a new outfit for a special event, you know. I think this was late evening. Looks like the sun was maybe ready to go down. And Father was just enjoying the colors and got some people to pose so there'd be a subject to the matter. Pretty sky. One of the three Eskimos posing there a minute or so ago, I still hear from every Christmas. She lives in Santa Cruz, California. When we finally get to the end of this and have a finished product, I should probably send her one of these. She's in some other couple other places in the pictures. I'm sure she's in her late 70s now. So we better hurry up. Well, this is Dave's invention. It's our dog team, and this is his amphibious sled, if you want to call it that. I don't know. I guess he thought it up all by himself. Oil drums were plentiful, and of course we had the dog team. But this little spit that goes out was down in front of the ACS, Alaska Communication System building, and he's gone around towards Browerville, and he's coming across where the narrowest stretch of water. But the dogs are swimming, and he's floating, and heck of a deal. Puckty and Stanley and Bunyan and Eddie, and I can't remember the other one's name. We had those dogs for 3 years or so. Now he's going to have to get off pretty soon, I think. Maybe not. That's a not many 13, 14-year-olds get to try out something like that. Pretty interesting. Well, this is the missionaries, the Presbyterian missionaries' vehicle. Roaring Boring Alice, he called it. It had a tractor. It could be a tractor, or it also had skis for winter. And I believe it was the only Barrow vehicle at the time, but it had its hazards. Lots of the folks have their own cars and trucks now. Sam tells me in the wintertime you can drive from Barrow on frozen water clear to Fairbanks. That's an interesting thing. The Roaring Boring Alice is in distress. I think Father has to pull her out with the tractor. And outside the village there was a place that folks had used for burial, but the ground permafrost, the ground heaves and opens up graves, and there were these piles of bones, and Dad was showing the Navy camp dentist the bones, and I was playing. Dr. Makoff, I remember him. Then the buttercups. This was spring. You had buttercups close to places full of snow. It was a brave attempt at starting spring. I don't remember what those were. It seemed like kind of like a lupin or something, but nothing was over 3 or 4 inches tall. They had dandelions and buttercup and this lupin-looking thing. And that snow that Mother's knelt down by there, but mostly spring. There's some of Mother's friends there, schoolgirls picking whatever they can find, buttercups. Spring is wonderful. After winter, when there's very little daylight, it's dark, it's cold. The people are wonderful. And the interaction with the people and that sort of thing make it livable, but it's confining. Well, this was the 4th of July, a captive audience here to move a boiler, a furnace, from one place to the other. And this is a young boy's foot race in the sand. The sand was very deep, hard to run in. The Eskimos loved to play, at least in those days when they were a little more carefree. Everybody gathered on the beach and they did their games. Not very many participants, but good spirit. There's the flagpole in the schoolyard. There's the men's sack race. Walking in that is enough, but a sack race in that sand is really a challenge. And there's the women's tug of war. They really threw themselves into it. Worked hard. And this is kind of a relay race game. You put all the funny stuff on and go to a certain place and take it all off and give it to the other guy. And they called this going to Fairbanks for some reason. Going to Fairbanks was a real novelty in those days. And these are sort of Mama's babysitters. They probably had Mama's parkie on with a big belt to secure the baby back there. They kept the babies amused while Mama did work, housework, or skin sewing, or something. Spring of the year. Babies like little action. She didn't have a belt, and you can see that very large parkie on her, and hard to keep the baby up where it's supposed to be. She's happy, but the baby's not. Doesn't look very happy. These were probably 7, 8-year-olds. This gal was a daughter of a white fella and an Eskimo woman, Thelma Stein. There's some lazy summer scenes by the beach. Must be a warm day. Dogs are yawning. Lazy. Sometimes people that didn't live in the village of Barrow but lived in the east or inland somewhere would come and pitch tents on the beach in the summertime. That gal's name is Cora Tigalook. She's kind of bashful. That was one of the school janitors, Ned Nusinginya. He's supervising dog teams in the mud are not very wonderful, but I think they had a load of ducks or something to move there on a sled. There wasn't any transportation in Barrow to speak of. Dog teams and Roaring Boring Alice, tractor at the school. And this is Bert Panigio, and the old fellow with him. This is posed for Dad's benefit. The old fellow with him is supposed to have adopted Bert. Bert's family had some kind of an illness, and a lot of them died off, and so Tokpuk adopted Bert. And Bert ran the native store there. Tokpuk was bringing in furs to set up kind of a example of how it goes. Bert and Dad were friends when Mother and Dad went to teach in Barrow in 1927. Bert and his wife were good friends of theirs. I'm still in touch with one of Bert's daughters. I think she'd be very interested in seeing these pictures. Tokpuk's expression almost never changes. He was sort of the stoic type. Dad got him to come to the schoolhouse, and he helped Dad learn a little Eskimo. This is a good sturdy board with a sandbag or something in the middle under it, and sort of like standing up teeter-totter, you know. Dad called it the preliminary to blanket tossing, but we did break a few boards. Boards were hard to come by. It wasn't a good thing to do, but this was fun. I used to do this. Trick is to come down, down on the board again. There. There's another sleepy dog, sun shining. They got tied out there, all kinds of weather. They were used to it, didn't seem to mind. Black face, white dog with a black face. There's some of the boats along the edge of the water there. They had several of these in the village, and they used them to go hunting, and they used the launch to get down to the reindeer herd when they were counting, butchering, and one thing and another. You probably saw the article in Sportsman. Dad wrote about this tractor train and opening up a coal mine and helping the natives have a business out of it. You had to learn how to run the tractor before it hit the beach so he could get it off the barge that it was on. And they worked together and made these sleds and the caboose, which was kind of an eating place. And this eider duck here, he, I think, had a little wounded or something. He needed a rest. He could fly. He just sat down there and strutted around a little to show us his pretty colors, I guess. He'd look nice against the snow. The eiderdown that he has under his feathers is a mighty warm stuff. Mother traded graham crackers for eiderdown with the school kids, and Ted and I still use a quilt that she made from eiderdown. It's warm. It might be 50 years old, but it's warm. Wonderful. I don't know that the natives use the down. They eat the ducks. It takes quite a little bit of down to make something. Well, these kids were playing on pans of ice there, seeing how far they can go without falling in. Nobody seemed to worry about it. They knew just when to jump, and it was a little iffy, you know. There was very little accidents as I remember, but very little supervision. But everybody watched everybody else's children. If there were children around and you were a parent at all, you watched. Looked after each other's. One big family. Daring little chap, isn't he? This is ice that's just off the shore. And they stepped on ice to get to this place. It's right close to the shore. Yeah, they know how far they can go. Well, these fellows are chopping big sheets of ice that they're going to stand up and freeze next to each other and form a ice corral for counting reindeer. I don't know how often they counted, but I don't think they counted too much after this time, or they didn't make an ice corral anymore. This was probably about the last one. When they got employment and a little easier living conditions, it was hard to get anybody to be a reindeer herder, to go out in isolation like that. You couldn't pay them enough to take care of the reindeer, and eventually the reindeer mixed in with caribou, and I think they call them caribou now, and never mind the reindeer. They poured water on and froze the things together, and they herded the reindeer into the corral and counted. It's 1945, I guess. I can't remember. I think Dad said maybe there were about 600 reindeer. Periodically they would have a time when they butchered reindeer. The natives used the skins for clothing and meat. They're pretty much meat eaters, fish and meat eaters. That's Ned again, who's the school janitor. This is sort of a novelty. They didn't harness the reindeer and use them in any way. They just let them be free. And I don't know why that one didn't have another horn, but it was an experiment, I think, see if they could pull the sled. The mother's standing here by sealskin that have been put out to bleach in the sun. So this would be spring. It's cold in spring. April might be spring other places, but April in Barrow, you have to have mittens on. And if you have glasses, it's better if you take them off so you don't frostbite your bridge of your nose. In April, it's cold. May is better. Well, this family has done the ice corral trick. I made a little porch on the front of their entry hall or something on the front of their house for winter. People store meat in there, bring it and cut a chunk off. It's like a deep freeze, you know, because it's always cold. Things keep out there. The wind blew quite a bit, so it provided a windbreaker too. When you opened the door, the wind didn't come in. There were a few sod houses still in those days and tunnels to get places. Tunnels for the dogs to get out of the cold and mainly tunnel to get into the house. They were all used to the cold and the wind. The dogs didn't mind. The caked on snow there. He's used to it. Used to being chained out and used to being cold. The dogs and the teams were like we would use a car, and there were so many dogs they had to have them chained. They couldn't have them socializing. I think the lady that had this place was a widow. Her husband died. She didn't have much to work with there. And this was a frame house. But the supply ship come in August, and it was mostly supplies for the teachers and white people in the villages. And natives didn't have access to lumber for their personal use. So frame houses were kind of rare. This one is probably driftwood covered with sod. They were very small houses. They didn't want a lot of place to heat. Have too much privacy. The whole family crammed into a couple rooms. This is Bert's daughter, the storekeeper's daughter. She was a bright gal, very intelligent, and probably about 18, 19 there, teaching the primary grades. And I think this is the 7th and 8th grade home ec. Sewing. The girls were making pot holders. Mary Brower in the front there, and Emily Sigabon. My friend Sam's sister Dorcas back there. The one behind on the left, Mabel Brower, had kind of a crush on my brother. I still hear from Mabel. This Christmas card, she told me confessed that she had a crush on him, which I already knew. And when the folks first went to Barrow in 1927-28, one of their pupils was Freddie Pollock, who was teaching the 3rd and 4th grade here when they came back the second time. The kids really liked school. They were eager to learn, worked hard. This fellow's kind of embarrassed. Had his picture taken. I think that's Ned's daughter, Sally, janitor's daughter. He had quite a family of children. And Simeon, I remember being artistic. He could draw really well. And he's embarrassed too. And there's Fred. It's pretty effective when one of their own people is the teacher. You can communicate so much better with them, help them understand. They don't have enough of that yet in the schools. Two to a desk. I think they're copying something out of the book, maybe both of them. Sharing the same book to copy. And practicing writing, maybe. And there's this fella who, hard to keep your face straight when you know your picture's being taken. Yeah, and I think the one on the far side in the black and white check is another one of Ned's girls. And Fred's writing something on the blackboard. It's got to be just right. It's Francis' little group of folks. Neither she nor Fred had any formal teacher's education. They were just bright students that were selected to help with the teaching. The little girl down on the left lower corner is Freddie Pollock's little girl, Emily. There's Vincent Nagiak again. He insisted that he was related to Dad because they had the same name. This fellow's, I think, was a child of the widow in the house that we saw earlier. She didn't have much to work with at all. They did the best they could getting together. He's trying to outstare the camera. Marvin Peter, the fellow on the left, they are filing, smoothing out baleen strips to weave baskets. They're just demonstrating for Dad, posing, but he was a shop teacher, and he instructed the young boys on ivory carving and basket weaving, some of the native arts. The people don't do this much anymore. They're working jobs, and they don't have that much leisure, and I don't know how many of them even know how. You can find baskets, but they're poor quality, poor workmanship compared to what it used to be, and very, very spendy, and they're hard to find. People don't have the time. It's an ivory handle on the top. Nice fitting basket. They usually have their initials or name on that bottom piece of ivory. Identify them, who made it. And here's Marvin's little shop group. This school building is the one that Grandpa Vincent came up in the August supply ship with all the lumber and helped build after the schoolhouse burned. But this school has been taken down and have replaced it now. I don't know if they still have ivory carving classes, or you would hope so. Some kind of shop. They have a modern school facility, I know. Leo Koliak was one of the janitors, and this is the ice cellar for the school, and those blocks of ice are drinking water. We had a big barrel behind the stove in the kitchen, and Leo brought the ice and it melted, and it's what we used for cooking and drinking. Anything, really. I was gotten into a galvanized tub for bathing in those days, and I'm sure the water came out of that barrel. This is one of the native family's ice cellars, the wooden cover over it. The dog there's got a little sled. He's got to pull the ice when they finally get it out of there. I guess Dad had to go down and secure the ice, but as grubby as he looks, you wouldn't consider that this was going to be drinking water. But it could be. This is summer, but permafrost under the ground there is cold year-round. This is located pretty close to the school where they are. You've got to tie it on so it doesn't fall off. It's a lot harder work pulling a sled of anything in the summer. It was the Presbyterian church, and they're heading towards the school there with the living room and bedroom windows of the living quarters, bottom floor there. This shows some of the frozen meat in the schoolhouse deep freeze, ice cellar. Turkeys and hams and reindeer. The janitor would go down and saw off whatever Mother asked for and bring it up. For some reason, the bacon was encased in tar, black tar. You had to peel that off to get to the bacon. It was some kind of preservative measure. Those were the birds, and there's the ham. Meat wasn't a problem. It was you never saw produce. Once in a rare while, when a pilot flew in, you might get a little bag with oranges or something. Very rare. Everything was canned or in a bag or box, but there was meat. And that's the bacon in the black tar. There was a freshwater lake behind the village, and they cut these blocks from it and brought them in and put them in the ice cellar so we'd have water. Leo Kaliak, he was a nice fellow. Good hard workers, very reliable. He had a big family too. There weren't many jobs for the natives to have in the village. There were only so many. And these two girls are Bert's daughters, Frances and Edith. Frances on the left was the teacher one, and Edith is the one in Santa Cruz, California that I still correspond with and hear from. And these two girls are Mabel Brower on the right and Margaret Amaugok on the left. More Dave's age, maybe a little older. Both of them thought he was wonderful. No, I'm sure it was vice versa. Just little innocent flirtations, you know. Mabel's the one that admits even this year of having had a crush on him. She's married and a grandma. There's Dave's friend Sam. We still hear from Sam. He calls me big brother. He's my big brother. These ladies are posing, demonstrating skin sewing, and the one closest is making sinew for sewing. It's part of the caribou. She's making into thread and makes waterproof sewing. And the one next to her, they used to crimp those soles with their teeth. I don't know how many, I suppose they do make mucklucks for themselves, but I understand they use pliers or something else now. This lady is using an ulu. They sewed strips and designs of skin together to form designs, decorative, on the slippers and the mucklucks. And she's sewing. Bert's wife, the storekeeper's wife, took me under her wing and tried to show me skin sewing once, but I broke the needle and I think she thought maybe I wasn't quite ready for that. She didn't offer me another lesson. She's making sinew, twisted. Twist one way and one the other way and then twist them together. I think that's what they did. Some of them's teeth were worn down pretty well from chewing on those. And there's another winter scene. Dog. Sod house. Little side place there for the dog to get under cover. We had several dogs. Dad was impressed with the chamber pot. What good care they took of their dog. This could be spring. This could be March, April. The middle of the winter is dark. There's only maybe an hour or two of daylight in the middle of the day for the whole 24 hours. And then it gradually comes back. And there's Dave and the dog team. We had about 7 or 8 dogs. I think this was the same day that Mother and I and the schoolgirls were on the walk out on the ice, sunny day. There they come. The ice is really piled up high. It's hard to imagine unless you see it or something against it to give you perspective. This looks like maybe a sunset scene. Well, this is taken from a plane going from the Arctic over the Brooks Range and towards the interior, towards Fairbanks probably. I'm not sure when Dad took this, but because he ran that radio station, he had lots of opportunities to fly. The radio contact was for 3 different airlines. if he had somebody that could man the radio station for a little bit while he went, quite often they would ask him if he wanted to take a ride. But the Brooks Range is a beautiful country in the summertime, a little forbidding in the winter. But it's not populated to speak of. There's a white couple, raised a couple of boys, or a boy and a girl, that have a place in the Brooks Range area that are guides. He's a guide. Take people on hikes and hunting trips. Anaktuvik Pass is a village that's in the Brooks Range. You pass through Anaktuvik Pass to get up into the Arctic, and there's a village there, Eskimo people. Not a place you'd want to crash land. No one would ever find you. It's not very appealing. This is traveling towards the interior, so it will get flatter, and you'll begin to see more and more rivers like snakes, round and curving this way and that way, and trees. Hills. The Arctic itself is pretty much flat. But down towards the Arctic Circle, Kotzebue, mountains across the water and hills behind the village. But this is getting more into the interior towards Fairbanks. Twisty, windy rivers frozen over. That's the Yukon River there. It's the biggest. So when you go to the East Coast, where states are so tiny and immensely populated, and then you see all this vast wilderness, it's really something, but a lot of it is isolated and not too appealing for living, undeveloped. Now this is Kotzebue. Kotzebue is strung out and along the coast there, along the water. That's where we went when we left Barrow. We spent a year in Kotzebue. Small place. There's mountains across the water there. Barrow was more isolated. Barrow was more of an innocent kind of place, I guess you might say. They had moral standards and a little more integrity. Kotzebue was very interrelated. Everybody was related to everybody else, and lots of promiscuity and alcoholism and all that good stuff. These boys are skiing, and they've got their dogs pulling them on the skis to get to the skiing site. Back behind the village, there was a good hill for that. So going back home, the Catholic priest encouraged and helped the youngsters. Probably homemade skis. They're the short little stubby things, but Try to get them learning how to ski. Beginner's hill there. The wind blew a lot there. There was a lot of snow and the wind blew it and drifted it, and some of the drifts were really high. There were drifts near the schoolhouse that were up higher than the eaves on surrounding houses. And this is spring. This fellow's in his shirt sleeves, so it must be a nice warm spring day. He's having a ride down the hill into the schoolyard, which didn't have much in it. Wide open space to ride your sled. And this hospital, behind the dog, was a three-story building. And that's the third story. 2 stories were covered with snow in the front. Steep snowdrifts, and lots of them, one end of the village to the other. This little girl had a Japanese father. Some of the schoolgirls, and this little girl was hunchbacked, deformity. He just lined up some of the children. They're ready to slide on the seat of their pants, anything to slide. They didn't have sleds. In those days they didn't. Dog sleds, but not children play sleds. This is a couple of boys, more Dave's age. Julius Jessup and Douglas Sheldon, dogs brought them out for a little skiing fun. They even made themselves a little jump thing there. It looked like rubber boots. Had a hard time keeping his skis on to get up the hill, but he's going over the jump now. They were a little more accomplished, practiced a little bit more. He's going to ski right into the dogs. Well, there's the hospital building again. It was right across the schoolyard. There's formed logs there for swings, but rope flapping in the breezes, but I don't remember swings actually being there. It looks very cold and miserable. When it's every day in the way of life, you get used to it. You dress for it, and you just get so you don't mind it so much. Father and I used to go over up and down the snowdrifts on Saturday night. I think it was one of the fellow had a trading post there, showed movies. Gene Autry and Roy Rogers. We sat on hard benches and had to wait while they changed the reels. It was pretty hot stuff in those days. More progressive than Barrow, but they were not quite as remote, isolated as Barrow was. This fellow has an axe chopping snow, frozen snow. I don't see anything to put it in, but a lot of them gathered snow to make water. It takes a lot of snow to make water, but if you don't have running water, you do what you can. Well, this is up north of Nome along the coast. Dad was hired by a fellow named Archie Ferguson, who was a trader that actually, that had the movie theater. He got the contract to deliver mail up and down the coast, and he had this boat made to order in Blaine, Washington. And we went down, the end of the school year, we went down to Seattle, and Dad supervised the final finishing touches on the boat, and then the family brought the boat up to Nome. We pulled barges and carried freight as well as mail. I don't think he made more than one or two runs, because Archie turned out to be sort of a volatile sort of fellow that screamed and yelled and used profanity and wouldn't listen to Dad's judgments of when it was fit to run the boat and when it wasn't. So it didn't last very long. We went, I think all of our things were in Nome, and we had them all sent to Fairbanks, and we moved to Fairbanks during the summer. This was, the legend was that the people were running away and turned into stone up there. It looks like people. The enemy was after them. They ran and they turned into stone. Tin City was up along the coast, up above Nome. Dave must have been maybe 14 or so. He was going to have a little dip in the Arctic Ocean. Cold, cold, cold. Aunt Lois visited us one of the summers we were there, and she got her swimsuit on and dipped in off the beach of Barrow. But that's cold water. He doesn't look like he thinks so, but that was the boat, the Kotzebue.